Hello, beautiful girls, and welcome back to the podcast episode of Time to Thrive. In today's episode, you and I are talking about the fear right now that is probably stopping you from taking the step to heal your relationship with food and how we can kind of normalize this a little bit and just chat through it so that we can kind of maybe get over it a little bit and hopefully take the next step in terms of healing your relationship with food and creating a more peaceful and in control relationship with it from a place of calm and consistency and peace and all those beautiful things that we always talk about here. So first thing I'm going to start today with though is Sherry's share. I've done this on the podcast recently and I just thought I'd also bring it to today's podcast because obviously we're on YouTube now as well. And my Sherry's share of today, of the week, is that it's very important that you remember to journal your feelings out. And I say this because this week I've just felt really emotional. And I also think this is off the back of having done a couple of really big long runs where you know that I'm training for an ultra marathon at the moment. And naturally, guys, we tend to feel a bit more emotional when we are a little bit more tired. We tend to think more, bringing in some science as usual, but think more with our limbic system as opposed to our prefrontal cortex. Our limbic system, I call this the toddler brain inside the Thrive Academy, and it's essentially the part of our brain that's a little bit more emotional. It's a little bit more impulsive. It tends to be a little bit stronger in women versus men as well. And it's just really the part of our mind that can be a little bit more like instinctual. It gets quite heightened. It is the thing that gives us a million food thoughts sometimes. And so especially, right, off the back of multiple big long runs, I'm physically exhausted. My sleep has been really terrible recently as well. I'm also coming off the back of my time of the month as well. TMI, but we're going to run with it. But essentially, right, can we see how this part of my brain is going to be a little bit more hyperactive right now versus a week where it is not my time of the month, where I have not done as much exercise, where my sleep has been really good. And I share this because it meant that I was a bit more emotional. And it's really important, girls, that we really remember that self-care is not just getting your nails done. It's not just something that you do to look pretty or feel pretty. Self-care is genuinely a non-negotiable in your life because it comes down to essentially it represents your levels and standards of how you treat yourself. So I really want that to kind of be the way that we're sort of beginning to view our self-care, girls, because it really is the standards that you hold yourself to, whether you are having a great week, whether you're having a not so great week, whether you're more emotional or you're feeling more rigid in your mindset, whatever might be the thing, your standards of self-care are extremely important. They also remind you and can serve as anchors to really help you feel a little bit more stable and supported when maybe you are by yourself, when you live by yourself, when you are having, like I mentioned, a not so great week. There are things that help anchor you into the present moment and get you feeling a little bit more like yourself again. Now, you girls and my girls definitely know within the Thrive Academy that I will always say self-care is not there to completely elevate your mood and get you feeling incredible again. That's probably not really realistic. That didn't happen for me this week. I'm still not feeling 110%, but what I am feeling is still emotional, but a little bit more grounded, right? Meaning that I just feel less like, oh my gosh, my feelings are up here, and I feel a little bit more like, okay, I'm just feeling the way that I am, but I still feel deeply anchored into who I am, my values, and I at least feel incredibly aligned with my own what I know I deserve to be treated as, right? Which is, with care and with love and with attention, the same way that I would with anyone else that I love. I am giving myself that same degree of care and attention, which is really important, right? Oftentimes we tend to, and this kind of speaks to our self-worth, we tend to not show ourselves a certain degree of love and care and attention. We want someone else to give that to us. But at the end of the day, people only know how to treat us by the way that we also treat ourselves. So just a reminder, girls, that your self-care it sets the standard and it sets the tone for how you treat yourself, but also how other people treat you as well. So off the back of that, when we think about self-care, it's incredibly important that we remember that it's on the not so great weeks that I always say in the Thrive Academy, we double down on our levels of self-care. These are the weeks that it's really easy to, as I mentioned, not journal out your feelings, not try and understand how you're feeling. And then what tends to happen is that we lean on things to self-soothe and to numb out, and self-sabotage tends to happen where you end up leaning on something that in the moment you think is going to really be supportive, like 3 bags of chips or 2 of the Magnums. And then off the back of that, you're like, wow, I actually feel worse than I was feeling before, right? But in the moment, that voice was telling you that it kind of doesn't matter because, right? And I always say self-sabotage is self-love simply done in a poor way, right? So it's part of your brain. It is that toddler. It is that impulsive part. It's that limbic system, not prefrontal cortex, you and I right now. It is a little part of at the nape of your neck that essentially is telling you that this is a good idea. And this sort of speaks to what we're speaking about today in today's podcast episode is around fear, because this part of your brain in that moment, what's happening on a week where you feel more emotional, you're probably having many moments where you just feel emotionally or mentally, sometimes even physically uncomfortable. And a part of your brain is like, oh my goodness, I don't want Sherry to feel like this. What do we do? And the thing that right now your brain is probably recognizing is something that is helpful as opposed to what it actually is, which is hindering. But what it believes is helpful is turning to the bags of chips because it gives you a dopamine hit, right? Even though rationally, you and I, prefrontal cortex right now, know that, okay, 3 bags of chips is not actually going to change my situation. It's not going to emotionally make me feel great. It's physically not going to make me feel great. Mentally, it's probably going to erode my own self-confidence and trust around the bag of chips. We rationally know that. However, in those instant moments, your limbic system is like, oh my goodness, you feel unsafe, better turn to something quickly, oh my goodness, and bang, we end up binging off the back of that or emotionally eating. So just a reminder, my Sherry share of the week is to journal out your feelings. And remembering, girls, we need to think about it less as just don't binge, let me go journal. It's more about, okay, if binging wasn't even a part of my life, if emotional eating was not a part of my life, and I had this epic relationship with food, and this is the shift you need to make here, it is about recognizing that, well, when I feel more emotional, what would I do? Right? We need to forget about being this person that leans on food and more so begin to identify as I am someone that deals when she doesn't feel the greatest. I deal with it. And I really have elevated levels of self-care where I journal out my feelings, where I do go for a run or for a walk, where I go sit down on the grass in my backyard and give my dog a pat. I go call my partner and share how I'm feeling or just send them a little message saying I love them and that makes me feel loved. Like really have a think about what are the things that if food was just never a part of your self-soothing coping mechanisms, what would you do instead? And if you're coming up blank, that makes complete sense why right now food feels like the most important pivotal part of your self-care routine. Because essentially that's the way that it's been operating for some time. And if we don't have any other tools in our toolkit, naturally, what are you going to be thinking about the next time that you feel emotionally charged? Food. So all that to be said, reminder right now, if you're not journaling out your feelings, I'm also a big believer about not being like, I have to journal every single morning because that's not realistic for me. Not every morning do I feel the need to, but it's about recognizing, and this is why within the Thrive Academy, we have an analogy called RIDE, which is RIDE, and R stands for recognize. It's about recognizing when you begin to feel a little bit itchy is the word that I use. It's when you feel a little bit heightened, a little bit dysregulated, and simply noticing that before it turns into this big urge, just noticing that something within you's shifted, whether it is your human, your nervous system, whether it's just your heart space, so your emotional space, or whether it is your head, it's the way you're thinking. You just feel all of a sudden a bit of brain fog coming on, or you're beginning to be a bit self-disparaging, or you have a lot of food thoughts, really beginning to recognize, where am I noticing this dysregulation coming from? And then, of course, we have the D and the E, which enables us to really know what to then focus on to get you out of feeling like this, which is what we work on in the Thrive Academy. So really recognizing when you do feel dysregulated, making sure that you do journal out your feelings has been a really key thing for me this week. Again, it's not to not binge. It's because I now am someone that I deal when I don't feel the greatest and I double down on my proper self-caring routine. So all that to be said, let's dive in to today's podcast episode topic. And that is being able to recognize when you do feel fearful around making the next decision in your life and why that fear might be popping up right now, and essentially what I want you to do about it so that you can actually start beginning to see the fear and still learn how to take steps forward to achieve whatever it is that you're wanting to achieve. Now, of course, as usual, I'm going to relate this to binge and emotional eating and healing your relationship with food. But girls, we always can see, and you girls know that I'll always relate it to more life situations as well, because everything can be applied in regular life context as well. And it's really important that you also begin to see the fear maybe in going for that promotion at work or going out and dating someone, or whether it is having a big conversation in your relationship, or whether it is choosing to actually look at your bank statements and look at your financial situation. Like just simply being able to recognize where you might be seeing fear in your life, but where you might right now be seeing the fear actually dictate what happens. Like you're letting the fear that you hold decide what happens next. as opposed to recognizing that fear is a powerful emotion and it's an indicator of how we feel in the present moment. And what we want to do is get curious as to why that fear is popping up and then decide, okay, well, based off of this, one, is it actually relatable? Is it not? And just being then able to decide, okay, well, do I want to be able to put this fear aside and do what's required anyway in order for me to actually progress and get out of the current situation that I'm in? So what I want us to first recognize is that fear is powerful and fear is important in many ways. Essentially, right, the only reason that we have fear is because that part of your brain, your limbic system, I always call this the $2 gypsy inside the Thrive Academy. Essentially, this is the part of your brain that is giving you the sense of fear because essentially it's predicting what it believes is going to happen. This is why we tend to think of worst case scenario. This is why we tend to fear that what happened in the past is going to happen again. This limbic system, this toddler, is a predictor, right? I call it the $2 gypsy because sometimes it is completely false and it's just kind of, it's filling in the gaps of what it thinks is going to happen. And in actual fact, in reality, oftentimes, how often does the worst case scenario actually happen? If you actually don't know the stats, I looked them up. Oftentimes, it's 3% of the time, the worst case scenario ends up actually happening. And more often than not, it ends up happening because we expected it to happen. And then we've actually filled in the blanks. And then we've kind of lent into that scenario and played out the same patterns, whether it is in binge eating and then turning to food because we thought, well, it's a Friday night, I'm going to binge anyway. And then we've had an extra snack and we've just kind of allowed the same situation to happen. Or whether it's in the dating kind of context and you feared something was going to happen. So you started kind of playing that out, almost predicting that it was going to, and then that triggered the situation. Whatever might be the context here, like even with finances, you might be like, oh my goodness, I'm someone that has no control over my money and I'm just spending all the time. And so it kind of means that you end up creating this self-fulfilling prophecy where you end up spending way more than you need to because you've literally identified as someone who isn't careful with her money. So the moment that you see something on sale, you're like, oh, well, I'm just that person. And you end up filling in the gaps and then you end up just overspending. So what I want us to recognize is that that fear that you're feeling right now over whatever next decision you have to make in your life right now, let's say it's choosing to heal your relationship with food, choosing to let go of diets, it's recognizing that the fear is only there because it is predicting the worst case scenario. And oftentimes the worst case scenario, the reason we're thinking about that is because we have been in a similar situation before and your brain has learnt what happened last time. So it's now predicting what it believes is going to happen next time because the situations are similar, right? Can we understand that that's actually very smart of our brain, right? Again, we are humans that are hardwired for survival. We are literally designed to remain in our comfort zone because we are prey, we are not predators. And so essentially I think that's correct. Like I'm questioning myself in terms of that exact terminology there. But essentially, right, we are designed for our comfort zone. We are designed to stay alive, right? So anything that is outside of our comfort zone, your brain sets off these little alarm bells. It's like, oh, this situation looks similar to a situation we've been in the past, and therefore I want to predict what may happen so that she remains in her comfort zone and doesn't repeat the same mistakes as last time that most likely caused a degree of pain. Now, can we see how even, let's say, for instance, letting go of, let's say, calorie counting, you might be fearful about taking more of an intuitive eating approach because the last time that you tried this, you had no structure, had no guidance, and intuitive eating meant that you just like tried to listen to how you were feeling, but how you were feeling was very bingey, and then you ended up binging. So you have now, or your limbic system, this part of your brain, your toddlery part, has now essentially connected. I always call it like the accordion. The accordion has smashed together. And now your brain is going intuitive eating equals weight gain because that's what happened in the past. As opposed to recognizing that, well, trying intuitive eating with no structure, no guidance, no support meant that I felt overwhelmed. I did not know what to focus on. I tried and then ended up overeating because I was so bingy. Equals weight gain. However, as I mentioned, the accordion gets smashed together and all your brain thinks is intuitive eating equals weight gain. Can't do that. Fearful. Undesirable outcome, right? So now your brain is fearful of taking more of an intuitive eating path, even though to get out of a binge restrict cycle, you have to stop counting calories for a little while and get more intuitive. Because right now the meal plans, the my calorie counting apps and all the rest of it, they're only hindering your progress because Essentially, right, as usual, you feel restricted, you then hit a target, you feel restricted, you then want to blow out, you have a bit more, all or nothing mindset kicks in, you overdo it, you have too much, and then bada bing, bada boom, we've binge, and then we Google another diet we can go on, and then we start again tomorrow. And the exact same cycle starts. And if you're anything like how I was, I did that for 8 years until I realized that it was that exact cycle was what I had to get out of. And I had to become more intuitive, because what was happening, I was overeating when I wasn't even hungry. My body was giving me these fullness cues. It was asking me to stop. I did not even want more food, but I didn't know how to stop because I was so in my head and I wasn't in my body. The moment I actually learned how to get back in my body, I realized my fullness cue was there. My hunger cues were there. And if I listened to them, I actually didn't even want to have any more food. I had to get out of my head and out of the numbers. But can we see how, similar to myself, when I first tried intuitive eating, I created this limiting belief that, well, it's something that I couldn't do because every time I've tried it, I gained weight. But it's because I didn't have the right method, didn't have the right strategy, and I did not have the right support, right? But can we see how we then end up creating these limiting beliefs? And it's all because I feared trying again. And this is probably without a doubt the most common thing that I chat about with girls on clarity calls and in my DMs, is that we have this huge fear of trying again, but we forget to recognize that we're not just trying again, we're actually trying a proper tried and tested method that actually works. And it is drastically different than anything you've tried in the past. Now, I want to relate this to even a situation, let's say, for instance, whether it's like with relationships, it's probably the most common one that is like a common topic in general. And like we can have fear. Let's say, for instance, you are having a bit of conflict in relationships, or even let's say with a girlfriend, right? Or even with your family, whatever context it may be in. Let's say, for instance, you're having a bit of conflict and that feels really fearful for you. And you've been in a situation before where that's been the case and the outcome meant, let's say, for instance, your best girlfriend and yourself in the past, you came against conflict, you didn't know how to talk about it, and that friendship broke. And that was the end of that friendship. So now, the moment that conflict appears in any relationship in your life, you may become very avoidant or very fearful of actually delving into deep conversation and solving whatever may be the issue and actually creating a very emotionally safe space. You may completely fear that because you're thinking, well, when there's conflict, either way, it's not going to be a desirable outcome. There's going to be a breakup in some way, in some way, case or form or whatever. As opposed to realizing that, hold on, well, is this a different friend? Is this a different person? Is this a different context? Is the nature of this relationship quite different, or friendship quite different? Am I also more mature? Is this person also more mature than the past scenario? And so we want to be able to see the fear and understand that, okay, the reason I'm feeling fearful is because I've been in a similar situation before. My brain is predicting the worst case scenario. However, can I recognize the disparity and the differences between this situation and past situations that led to the undesirable outcome? And when we can begin to recognize that, again, right, can we see the fear is valid? The fear is okay to be there. It's not that the fear should not be there or we have needed to talk ourselves out of it. What we need to do is be able to recognize the fear as being valid, but then recognizing almost the validity, like the actual real-time validity of, does this actually apply to this situation? And this is right where sometimes the case might be like, well, yeah, there is a bit of fear here. It actually does apply to this situation. It's a bit similar here or there. But then we also, and this is like a real key reframe, we also want to become the kind of people that can begin to also think about, okay, well, what is best case scenario? And I don't mean to always be half glass full kind of person. I mean, like I do want to be, so like I kind of am, but like we want to be not in the woo-woo sense, in the very realistic sense of, okay, well, what is the best case scenario here? Let's say, for instance, in this context with this conflict situation, going, okay, best case scenario is that we're able to talk through this, and talk through this, and conflict gets resolved. And I actually end up realizing that conflict is not a bad thing. Conflict is something that actually can deepen a connection together. Okay, fantastic. So in order for that best case scenario to occur, what is going to be required of me? What do I need to get clear on? What emotional state do I have to be in? And how can I start taking steps forward? Right. So can we see how we can start planning for best case scenario, controlling what we can control and stepping towards that? And right, we can end up creating a beautiful self-fulfilling prophecy of going, okay, well, if I want the best case scenario to occur, I also have to act in the best case scenario kind of way as well, right? So can we see, even let's say with intuitive eating, we can apply the exact same framework there and be able to go, okay, well, in order for intuitive eating this time to work for me this time, because I don't want to be counting calories forever. I don't want to always have my fitness pal out. I don't want takeout nights to me in a spiral. I don't want to always have to go to brunch and just get the cappuccino because I have no idea how to have 3 scrambled eggs on toast and feel fine about it without binging. I want to be able to go out and get whatever might be the thing. if that's the kind of woman you want to be, okay, well, we need to learn how to intuitively eat. So we want to realize now that, okay, if I learn how to become a bit more intuitive, have a little bit more freedom with my food choices, without the rigidity, without strict food rules, also without hashtag food freedom of just like eating all the donuts whenever I want, because we all know that's not going to give you a lean physique. But being able to go, well, best case scenario, if I learned how to intuitively eat and I became more intentional, became more grounded, felt more chill with my food choices, if that was the case, well, what would I need in order to actually create that scenario for myself? Okay, I'm probably going to need an actual proper strategy, probably going to need a bit of a blueprint, a bit of a plan, probably going to need someone in my corner to support me, and then actually having someone guide me through step by step. Okay, if I actually had that, do I believe that my outcome could be different to what I've tried in the past, which was just kind of like hashtag winging it? And can we appreciate, well, okay, well, the fear actually did serve me, but can I see the fear was not representative of what was actually going to happen? The fear was representative of what's happened in the past, and it was simply trying to protect me in order to stay safe. But girls, can we realize that fear, if we let the fear decide what happens, let's say with healing our relationship with food, becoming a bit more intuitive eating, in healing our relationship with food, if we let the fear decide, what's going to happen is that you will forever stay stuck in your current comfort zone of tracking calories and just plugging into an app and always going out for brunch and then fully sending it and then coming home. Like, can we see, like, nothing changes because the fear is literally keeping you stuck because you're allowing the fear to not be useful and to actually help you decide to take the next step. You're allowing the fear to decide to keep you in the exact same situation that you've been in before, simply because you're scared of the past thing that's happened in the past repeating itself, right? So can we see how the fear is useful, but we need to be very careful to see the fear and use it to understand ourselves better so that we can actually then pop it aside and then still take steps. And I think a really powerful reframe here to kind of close this conversation is to be able to, like, this is where the classic saying of see the fear and do it anyway, right? I never expect people to see the fear and just like barrel their way through anyway. It's being able to see the fear, understand why it's there, understand also the scientific part about it, essentially. Like, your brain is literally giving you this sense of fear because it's wanting to keep you safe. But safety does not always mean, well, safety, honestly, I would say all the time, it is never going to support you in actually taking a step forward and progressing, right? Fear keeps you in that comfort zone. And if we're always in our comfort zone, if we're never doing new things, if we're never going out on that date, if we're never trying a new relationship, if we're never trying intuitive eating, if we're never trying to get on top of our finances, if we're never trying to get a promotion, if we're never trying to repair a relationship in your family, if you're never trying to actually do anything, right? If you're never seeing the fear and doing it anyway, nothing will ever change in your life and you will feel very, very stagnant, right? And this was exactly the case for myself when I was healing my relationship with food, right? When you know, before I decided to move to Queensland last year, before I decided to move to Bali the year before I started to, start my business 5 years ago now, I had so much fear. But what I was good at is seeing the fear, understanding what I was fearful of, and being able to go, okay, well, I'm not going to make that worst case scenario a self-fulfilling prophecy by seeing the fear, letting my brain fill in the gaps, and just like letting that end up being the outcome. Because the outcome now, not doing anything, or the worst case scenario, they both freaking suck. Or I could become the kind of person that was like, okay, well, I can see the fear and that may happen, but also what if that didn't happen? And what would I need to put in place in order to ensure the best case scenario actually did happen? What is within my control so that I can actually kind of tailor my life to the best case scenario? And the moment that I started to operate like that, and right, can we see how that's actually seeing the fear and doing it anyway, just with a little bit more groundedness and intentionality? What ends up happening is you end up bit by bit putting the pieces together and stepping forward and progressing. And yeah, guys, at the end of the day, we need to get comfortable with being a bit uncomfortable. And that's being able to see the fear and be like, yep, you know what? I'm a little bit nervous. Yep, you know what? I'm a little bit nervous. But being able to get comfortable with that discomfort, because that's really what creates incredible progress in your life. So if you're someone right now that is feeling fear in your life, I want you to remember that it is okay that you are feeling that fear, but do not allow it to be a predictor and creator of your future, right? Do not allow it to give you that $2 gypsy, oh my gosh, this must therefore mean this is going to happen, and how do I... Don't allow that to be the case. See the fear, think about the worst case scenario, and then think about the best case scenario and start planning for that, and ask yourself, what would be required to ensure the best case scenario actually did occur for me? And how can I make that as much of a reality for myself as possible? And then being okay with the journey towards best case scenario being a little bit challenging. It's okay that it might be hard at times. It's okay that you might feel as though you're going to take a couple of steps back, but that's no predictor that hashtag I'm going to fail. Because at the end of the day, girls, like, we always fear failing, right? We always fear not getting something perfect, not getting things the way that we want them to be. But realizing, well, can we not think about staying in the exact same situation right now that you're in? That also might be, for you, failure right now, right? And I always say that failure is never really a thing, but if we think about, it's hard to progress towards your goal. It's hard to see fear and do it anyway, yes. But staying stagnant in your current situation, right? For you right now, it might be finances. It might be, staying stuck in your current job that you don't enjoy. It might be staying in a relationship right now that's not fulfilling. It might be staying single. Whatever your situation is right now, if there's a part of your life that you're not stoked with, your relationship with food, your body, at the end of the day, that's really challenging to stay stuck and feel as though you're not progressing. And it's also hard to choose to take steps forward and to progress, to go out on that date, to trust someone and start a relationship, to reconnect with someone, to actually delve into your finances and understand why it feels like you're leaking money right now, to actually go overseas and travel, to move interstate, to have a challenging conversation with someone in your life that you love, whatever may be the thing. It's okay that you have fear around that, because it's hard to stay stagnant and it's hard to progress, but it's choosing to see the fear of progression and choosing to put the fear aside and do what's required anyway, so that you actually can ensure that the best case scenario actually does happen in your life. So girls, off the back of that, if you take one message from today, see the fear and do it anyway, but do it from a grounded, intentional place. And if today's podcast episode touched you in some way, if something landed for you that you're like, oh my goodness, I feel like something just little ping, a little aha moment, please slide into my DMs or leave a comment below and let me know. I love hearing from you girls as to what did and did not land, and anything that you guys always want to unpack with me. I love that so much when you're like, this particular topic, I love this. And then you end up having a chat with me about it, girls. I love it so much. You have no idea. But yes, definitely if something landed for you girls, please also slide to my DMs. Let me know the little aha moment that you had. Otherwise, I'll see you girls in next week's podcast episode. I love you. I believe in you. I back you. And just remember, see the fear and do it anyway. You are so much more wildly capable than you give yourself credit for. Everything that you have found challenging in the past, you have taken a step towards and you've worked through it. So continue to do so, and you'll continue to see your life completely unfold before you. Love you, and I'll see you next week.